I'm either going to step on some toes, offend somebody, or get some really interesting discussion on a situation. What is console elitism? Why must it stop? So first of all, this is when someone who plays on console makes fun of one of the millions of PC players, some of the hundreds of thousands of Switch players out there, or like the 3 Stadia players. They say that the console and the controller are better. Now let's look at the scope of this issue. How widespread is it? I think it's more niche. It's not something you hear about every day, but it is something that exists and doesn't get talked about a lot. We talk about elitism in Doom Eternal. I did a big video on it a year ago. It has its own different set of disadvantages to it. So it's not a huge issue, but it's out there. And let me give you an example. Say someone makes a post or they post a video, say that they beat the Icon of Sin on Nightmare. Awesome. And then the console elitist will come in and say, oh, that's nice, but I've done it on Xbox, or I've done it on PlayStation or a Switch, or yeah, that's cool, man, but yeah, you had a keyboard and mouse. You had it easier than me. So you basically used a cheat code because anyone can beat keyboard and mouse, and not everyone can beat on controller. Okay, that's slightly exaggerated, but you get the gist of the point behind it. They will say that, oh, controller play is better, PC is invalidated because controller is harder. I mean, hey, I'll get to my experiences with controller here in just a second, but to look at one platform and the other platform that has the same end goal, there are going to be different handlings, there are going to be different mechanisms with how you do your controller with your thumbs, or how you hit all these keys with the keyboard. They are different, and yes, controller does have its difficulties. Believe me, I've tried it. It is not easy. But to say that it's better than PC or that you suck if you're a PC player is absolutely not fair. By the way, if you're enjoying the video, consider becoming a supporter. It's like Patreon, but it's all done through Discord, so you don't have to make an extra account or anything, and it helps me out a lot. Check the link in the description, and we'll do something special when we hit 5 supporters. You won't want to miss it. Now, console is limited in other ways. I've actually been speaking to someone. They said there's input lag, and you don't really realize it till you actually go to a PC, plug in your controller, and play there. Now, I know some people may look at this and say, Alston, you're rage baiting. Well, let's actually take a look at what the real issue is and the response to it. Now, my experience with console, it is tougher because having that controller, even though I grew up with controllers and PC and mice, keyboard, whatever, it is different and it is harder. You can take a console player and put him on a mouse and keyboard and he will do better on the controller. That is the thing. If you're used to mouse and keyboard and you have trouble going to controller, it takes time. It is new muscle memory. It's his new mechanics. Everything is different. Now, if someone says that you can't quick swap on controller, I will refer them to Mr. No Life's video in which he shows that you absolutely can quick swap on controller. Is it harder in the grand scheme of things? I would say as a mouse and keyboard player, yeah, controller is really hard. And what ground do I have to stand to say this? Well, I have beaten on Xbox Nightmare, played a little bit into the master levels, and really have even played a little bit of the start of Horde mode on Xbox, and really trying to sink some hours in of what I was able to figure out what it was like on a controller. And well, realistically, I really wanted to play Doom and I wasn't home, so that gave me a chance to. Now, whenever I try to have a discussion, I don't want to attack the person for their beliefs, but actually try to dismantle the belief system itself. So these people that are saying, oh, controller, you have to play that or you suck, which is completely the inverse of what we usually see, they're not bad. I'm not saying they're bad people or anything like that. I'm not attacking them doing these ad hominem arguments or whatever. I am saying their argument is faulty and this is why. Usually you see it as PC that is attacking the console players, but when it comes to the other way around, there is something interesting we need to talk about. I can already predict the reaction to this video. Someone will say, Alston, you are just butthurt that console players can do some really cool things out there that you have trouble doing on PC, or that your other friend has trouble doing on PC. Oh, you're just jealous. You know, there's a bit of a difference between being jealous about something and addressing an issue and giving counterpoints to their argument. Is console better and harder than PC? In ways, yes. But when you see people go and say, hey, yeah, good job, I did it on console, you did it on PC, or hey, yeah, you should do this on a controller. It's a little bit different. So how do we fix something like this? Well, we realize that each platform is different. I mean, there are people who come and get a PC, I know them, and still play on controller. And this can be for a different variety of reasons. For one, maybe that's what they're comfortable with and that they have played with all their life and they don't want to switch over to mouse and keyboard. Or two, maybe they've tried to switch over to mouse and keyboard and they said, you know what? This is actually pretty tricky. I don't think that I want to do this. I want to stick to my controller. And 3, maybe they want to play both. Some people are actually able to be pretty proficient in both and will use one controller for one point, mouse and keyboard for most of their play. It really just depends on the person and what they want out of the game and how they want to play it. I personally go with mouse and keyboard any day. I'm way more comfortable with it. I feel like I can do better with it, and I feel like that there are restrictions that controllers have as far as being super snappy like a mouse and keyboard can, but does that mean that I should turn around and say, oh, look what I did on a mouse and keyboard. Hey, let's see you do that on controller. And well, actually some people will probably be able to. That's beside the point. And when it really comes down to it, when you say that the controller's better than the mouse and keyboard, the opposite of what we usually see, all that is doing is creating a rift in the community that is already a game that is not as big as Fortnite or Apex and causing arguments. Like, is it really, think about it, is it really at the end of the day worth your 5 minutes of time to go die on this hill of my controller is better than your mouse and keyboard? Why? Why does it matter? At the end of the day, are you going to save world hunger? No, you're not going to. You're just ranting on the internet. Thought about cutting that part out. I'm going to leave it in here. But then you might say, Austin, you're making a rambling video about the elitism of console. But when you really look at the underlying reason behind all of this, the ranting is pointless. It's silly. There's no use to it. This video, on the other hand, brings light to an issue and makes you try to realize, like, hey, maybe this complaining that I'm doing is kind of silly. Like, what is the point at the end of the day? What are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to self-serve and feed yourself and say, this is something that I feel good about? Well, we'll flip that around. Whenever you do feel good about something, don't drag somebody else down to pull yourself up. Why don't you just say, like, hey, you beat the icon on a mouse and keyboard. Great job. Proud of you. You've probably spent hours trying to do that. Yeah, I did it on a controller, and yeah, it might have been a little bit easier for me, but you know what? This actually brings me to a very interesting point that I'd like to say here. If you have a problem with a mouse and keyboard player, if you have a problem with a controller player, try it. Go get a controller, plug it in, play it. Go get a mouse and keyboard, play it. Seriously, like, a lot of people, for example, my own personal experience, rag on speed running, like the any percent super glitchy kind. They say, oh, it takes no skill, it's something that anybody can do it. Well, try it then. Spend a couple hours really trying to learn the tech, the basic movement, and you will find that just because you don't like something doesn't make it easy or take no skill or stupid or dumb. And you know what? If you spend those times and you find out, like, hey, this is not for me, I really am not having fun, say that. You can say that you don't enjoy something, and I'd much rather you do that than say, oh, this takes no skill, or this is stupid, or my way of doing this is better. Is there a more optimal meta play? Yeah, there could be than what you currently do. Is there a different way to go about things? Yes, like I said earlier in the video, I will stand by mouse and keyboard for Doom Eternal. I have a lot of fun with it, and I don't really play a controller because I've done mouse and keyboard for FPS like forever now. The big thing we have to understand is, if you beat something using a controller or a mouse and keyboard or a Switch or whatever, tell the world, be proud of it, own it, enjoy it. But don't be a jerk, because that just makes you look bad, and everybody else thinks it looks bad too, and that reflects back on the Doom community, so don't do it. Now, check out my video on elitism in Doom Eternal in general right here. Subscribe if you like this. I'm Austin. Thank you for watching.